Okay, everyone, we are here. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. We are presenting the Nevada law PDH requirement that you get 1 hour of PDH credit for attending this webinar hosted by the Nevada Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors. Before we get started with the actual presentation, I want to run through just a couple things. We're limited to 500 attendees, although right now we are at 100. So no one should have trouble getting in. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the people trying to get in. So I'm going to keep you all muted. As I said earlier, it gets a little overwhelming to try to manage who's speaking. If you want to ask a question, just use the chat function if you would, and then later on, my email will be visible or be available, and you can also send me an email if you have questions that we don't get to towards the end. This is 1 hour, and it's pretty packed, but I think we'll have a few minutes at the end for some questions, and we'll try to do that through the chat function. I'm also going to explain how to document your participation in this webinar to get the PDH credit. Nevada, if you're licensed in other states, you probably know that every state operates a little bit differently. Some states require that you submit a certificate or some kind of physical proof. Nevada, we do not. All we require is that when you renew your license, you just claim the 1 hour of PDH credit for Nevada law that you attended this webinar. That's it. However, I make a certificate available to those of you that want them, and I'll just email me with that request, and I'll send it to you as a PDF that way. So I think that's it. I'm going to introduce our presenter. Mark Faulkner is a licensed civil engineer. He's also the executive director of the Nevada Board. In addition to his day-to-day operations of the board, his duties include working with the state legislature to maintain and update the statutes and regulations that govern the practice of engineering and land surveying in Nevada, which is the subject of today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to let Mark take over. Mark?
Thank you, Derek, and thank all of you for attending today's webinar on Nevada law. As Derek said, I'm the executive director. I have been acting executive director since April of this year. And a little background on me. For 32 years, I've been a licensed practicing civil engineer. My main focus was in the private consulting industry, where I concentrated on master plan community, single family and multifamily residential, as well as commercial type developments, be they industrial, retail, or school type site developments. And as Derek mentioned earlier, you will all receive 1 professional development hour for attending this webinar today. And so with that, we already have our first, I will move to the Nevada Revised Statutes and Nevada Administrative Code. We've highlighted our booklet here with NRS 625 and NAC 625. It is available to anyone who would like to have a copy. Just go to our website, and there's instructions on how to fill out an application to receive a free booklet. To let you know, though, this booklet is slightly out of date in that we've updated a few of the regulations this past year. And I'll go over those in more detail, but in June and September, a couple of our regulations were updated. As I said earlier, the Nevada Revised Statute 625 governs the board and all of our licensed professional engineers. And it's the statutes, these statutes tell us how we are to maintain our professional standing. Nevada Administrative Code is our regulations or the rules. And these regulations are written in support of our statutes and provide more detail and information to you on how to understand the statutes as they're written. So with that, let's move forward to Nevada Administrative Code 625-220, which is licensed by discipline. Nevada is a discipline-specific state, and in that I mean you need to be licensed in a certain discipline. We license about 15 different areas of expertise, and you need to practice within your area of expertise. In that I mean, if you hold a PE license for civil engineering, you are allowed to practice within civil engineering. Mechanical would be mechanical and so forth. So go ahead.
Sorry, Mark, you froze on the Nevada law book. You want to advance the slide? There you go.
Thank you, Derek.
And click it again. There you go.
But and I'll try to stay up with my slides. I get caught up in my speaking, but I apologize for that. So anyway, we emphasize a stay in your lane mentality. You practice within your area of expertise. And we have gotten questions before from mechanical engineers asking if they can stamp some incidental electrical plans. And the answer to that question is no, because it is outside your area of expertise. Moving on to NRS, Nevada Revised Statutes 625-520, unlawful practice of engineering. And I'm going to read these because I think they're important.
So
you
need to go ahead and click your slide. There you go.
One, it is unlawful for any person not properly licensed or exempted in accordance with the provisions of this chapter to, one, practice, continue to practice, solicit to practice, offer to practice, or attempt to practice engineering or any discipline thereof. Directly or indirectly employ any means which in any manner tends or is likely to mislead the public or any member thereof, that any person is qualified or authorized to practice engineering. Any person to present or attempt to use as his or her own the license or stamp of another person. Any person to attempt to use an expired, suspended, or revoked license. And I've got a couple of examples. One is we received notification from an out-of-state firm that one of their employees had falsely represented themselves as a professional engineer. And the reason this company contacted us is this person had falsely used the license of another individual who is legally licensed to practice civil engineering within the state. And so we issued that person who was practicing unlawfully a cease and desist order. Another example, and this one is quite flagrant. Several years ago, a professional engineer had let his license lapse for over 10 years. So for 10 years, he's practicing to do engineering with a expired license. The renewal cycle came up several times and they chose not to renew their license. When the firm that they were working for found out that this person was actually stamping plans with an expired license, they confronted the person, and that person ended up self-reporting to the board. We looked into it, and this person was heavily disciplined. We fined him quite extensively. And the other important thing to note here is that all of the plans that this person had stamped in the previous 10 years that were illegally stamped had to be re-reviewed and re-stamped by a professional with an active license. So that was a very messy situation. And but anyway, those are a couple examples of practicing illegal practice. Continuing specifically in sections in NRS 625, 520, sections 2 through 5, the board may order a cease and desist, like I'd explained earlier, or we can seek injunctive relief from the court system. And another example, and this one is with the surveyor. A surveyor had been previously disciplined and was on probation. However, he was not complying with his probation, and therefore his license was suspended. And he continued to practice with a suspended license and was again disciplined by the board. And I just kind of want to talk, it's not in our slide presentation, but Nevada Revised Statutes 625, 565 talks about responsible charge and requirements for an engineer, things that are against the statute regarding licensees. And
Mark, I think you want to advance your slide. There you go. There you go.
So I'm sorry, let me go back to here. And 565 is unlawful use or signature of a stamp of a professional engineer or professional land surveyor. And we had an example of this. We had a licensee who had copy and pasted a land surveyor's stamp and put it on his plans. And that surveyor, when confronted because there was some issues with the survey, was confronted. He knew nothing about it. And so that engineer was disciplined. And then we had another instance where an engineer forged a signature of an entity reviewer. And that reviewer, this was found out because that reviewer had been retired for a year before his signature was added to these plans. And I just want to let everybody know that violation of this, persons who violate 565 are guilty of a gross misdemeanor. I think it's important that everybody understands, the gravity of 625, 565. So
you're still on 520.
Yeah, we don't have that slide, Derek.
Oh, we do. Okay, gotcha.
No, I kind of ad-libbed that. I'm freestyling a little
okay.
bit. In Nevada Administrative Code 625, 610 deals with responsible charge. And this is where you as a professional need to be in charge and have control over the plans or the product that you are responsible for. And I've got an example of, it was a electrical engineer who had been provided a sample set of electrical drawings for a school, and I believe it was in Northern Nevada. Now, the sample set was to give that engineer an idea of what was required with the submittal for that particular school district. And the staff working on these drawings basically cut and pasted the notes and details from that example set of plans. The plans were submitted, and the plans didn't hardly resemble the project that was actually being worked on. The sample set was for a new school, and this project that they were doing was a retrofit. retrofit, excuse me. Anyway, this engineer was again disciplined for not being in responsible charge of his project. NAC, Nevada Administrative Code 625-26T, is professional engineer versus structural engineer. And you can be licensed in the state of Nevada with a civil PE with the expertise of structural engineering. That does not make you a structural engineer. A structural engineer, to be licensed, needs to meet all the educational and experiential requirements, passing the FE exam. And then they also must sit for and pass the NCES National Structural Exam. And the reason we require this is Nevada is a fairly highly seismic state, and Nevada's structural engineers can stamp plans that takes special expertise, buildings that are more than 3-story in height or 45 feet tall measured from the lowest point of the structure, or any structure in the risk category 5 that's in accordance with the International Building Code. A PE is not, as somebody who holds a PE license with the structural is not allowed to stamp these drawings. That has to be stamped by a licensed structural engineer. Moving on to NAC 625-545, a written contract. And
this one's, you want to click forward to this one, Mark, because it probably want to be able to read these, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Before performing any work, a licensee shall enter into a written contract with each client for whom the licensee will perform work. The written contract must include, without limitation, provisions specifying the scope of the work, the cost for completion of the work, and the anticipated, and this is one of our updated regs, but the anticipated schedule for completion of the work that indicates the time and sequence of each part. And additionally, a disclosure as to whether the licensee currently maintains a policy of professional liability insurance. Now, this is not saying that you need to hold a policy of professional liability insurance. You just need to state to your potential client whether you hold the professional liability insurance or you do not. Now I want to go back into the contracting point, and this is one of our regulations that was updated, and it was adopted on September 16, 2024. And as you can see, we removed the word date and added schedule, and then we added more information, schedule for the completion of the work that indicates the time and sequence of each part of work. And what we want here is we want you to communicate with your clients. We all understand that every project has a series, is fairly complicated and has a series of milestones. And it also requires information from other people involved or other groups involved with the project, whether it be the architect or a surveyor or a geotechnical engineer, what have you. There are other items that are needed for a professional to move forward. So we've put in where we want, and that's why we added schedule. And this is where you communicate to your client. And you would give, for example, you would say, when I receive item A, I will proceed with item B and complete that work in 2 weeks or whatever the required duration would be for a specific task. And so, because we realize that this is a bit open-ended, and what we're trying to emphasize here is we want you communicating with your clients. Now, some of you do work for large clients, and that's probably not as important as for those of you who are doing work with smaller clients. Say somebody that's working on a custom home or a very small subdivision. The lay people don't necessarily understand the vernacular that we use, and you need to communicate with them what the process is and walk them through the steps and let them know when you're going to require information from them so that you can continue to proceed forward with their project. Nevada Administrative Code 625-530, relationship with employers and clients. Act in professional matters as a faithful agent or trustee for each employer or client. And I'm gonna walk you through an example here, and I will let you know. Typically, 625-530 comes into play when we receive a complaint for another violation. And then as we're going through and looking at the case, we find out that in many instances, the professional did not act as a faithful agent to their client or to the agency. An example of that was a car wash project where the professional had been paid up front for the project. However, they did not complete the work. And we disciplined this professional in addition to other complaints against them for not acting as a faithful agent to their client. They accepted payment for the work and did not perform the services. It's fairly obvious, but we do see that. And so you communicate with your clients and act as a faithful agent. NRS 625-330, entry upon land or water to perform duties. And this is for surveyors. And this is a surveyor may enter a public land, water, or body of water to investigate, recover, establish, reestablish, rehabilitate, perpetuate, or use evidence of boundary location. What's important here is if you need, as a surveyor, you need to get onto property, you need to provide written notice to the owner or occupant of that property that you will be on their property. Your notice needs to tell them what you need to do and when you plan on being there. I also want to emphasize you provide the written notice, and if there's a problem, we're going to ask to see your written notice that you provided to that property owner or land occupant. Now, the other thing I want to stress is you need to provide the written notice. However, you are not required to get permission. If someone does not give you permission, you are still allowed to go on site and do the survey. If you think or you believe there could be issues, then we would urge you to get a hold of the necessary officials in your area and get an escort out to do the work that you need to do. So written notice, please obtain written notice before you start a survey on private property by that owner or occupant. Nevada Administrative Code 625-680 deals with disagreements concerning measurements of positions or monumented corners. If a professional land surveyor has a material disagreement with the measurements or monumented corner positions of another land surveyor, the professional land surveyor shall contact the other land surveyor and attempt to resolve the agreement. We want the surveyors to come together and try to work out and come up with a solution to their disagreement. We're trying to avoid a messy survey record. And as you all know, survey records are legal documents. So as a professional surveyor, you want to do your best to create a clean survey record. And so when these disagreements come up, we urge you to reach out to that other surveyor of record and try to come to some sort of resolution. Moving on to NAC 625-550, agency submittals. Any person licensed pursuant to this chapter who is employed by a government agency shall notify the board if another licensee has submitted more than one set of plans to the governmental agency that cause a concern regarding the lack of competency of the licensee submitting the plans. Another licensee has failed to timely respond to correspondence from the government agency. And what we're trying to avoid here is that design by review. When you submit a set of plans, they should be ready and you should be confident that they are complete and ready to be reviewed. And the other part of that would be when you're getting comments or if the agency reaches out to you, please respond to them in a timely manner. And again, this comes back to communication. One, communicating on your plans by making sure that you're accurately providing a competent set of plans for your initial review, and then that you're doing your due diligence when addressing their comments and responding to comments. In 2022, the city of Henderson took the lead role and the board supported them. And together we put out a quality plan submittal and best practices guide. Like I said, Henderson took the lead on this. There were some municipalities that participated. The board acted in support. And then we also had other public agencies and the private sector who all worked on this document, and they put together a best practices guide that will help not only the consultants as they prepare their plans, but it also gives the reviewers and the agencies some guidelines. We all want when you get for the private sector, when you get a comment, you need to respond. Well, you may not respond exactly the way an agency may want you to respond. And that's where this provides guidelines so both groups can come together and make sure that we have quality plans and that the review process is going as smoothly as possible. Nevada Administrative Code 625-610 deals with digital signatures. And First, I want to start out with a digital signature is metadata. Some people confuse an electronic signature that may have their signature and an image of their stamp. This is just an electronic copy of an image and would require a digital signature. And that digital signature is metadata. And Henderson utilizes the digital process very well, and so do several agencies. I say Henderson because that's what I'm familiar with. What we're noticing is most all of our engineers are complying with and using the electronic digital submittal very successfully. I will tell you though that we are preparing a little webinar on the digital signature process. So that's upcoming. And if you're looking for guidance on electronic submittals and the digital signatures, you can go to our website and hit the Engineers and Land Surveyors tab, and then the electronic submittal and digital signature guide will pop up, and you can go there for instructions on how to set up a digital signature in Acrobat and in Bluebeam. As I stated earlier, we did update some of our regulations. NAC 625, 610. I'm sorry. I apologize. We updated some regulations. Go to those right now. In July of 20, several of these regs were adopted. Of importance, NAC 625, 210 and 625, 240 dealt with active military and veterans and their spouses. And what we did is we waived the initial licensure application fees and the comity endorsement licensure application fees for all those active members, veterans, and their spouses as they seek licensure within the state of Nevada. NAC 625, 310 was a clarification for exams required for structural engineering licensure and removed the requirement for professional engineering applicants to pass the short examination on NRS and NAC Chapter 625. NAC 625, 230 and 330 each were repealed. 230 removed the requirement for a separate application to be filed by an applicant applying for more than one discipline. That was just extra work and wasn't needed. And NAC 625, 330 was repealed for an applicant to, if an applicant chooses not to appear for an examination scheduled by the board, that was removed because the only harm they've done is to themselves. The next regulations that were again updated and adopted on June 20th, 2024 was NAC 625, 420, and it was amended for clarification related to retired and inactive status of license and the requirements to move a license back to active status. NAC 625 was repealed The board's online renewal system clearly states the license expiration date, so that was removed. The board's process for firm registration was removed, and to exclude a requirement of a certificate of fictitious names to complete a registration, that's no longer. And the intent of 1A contact information is already addressed in Nevada Administrative Code 615. NAC 625-765 was also repealed, as it does not need to be restated in the regulation that positional certainties are to be used in construction survey. That was a redundancy. And last but not least of our updated regulations were Nevada Administrative Code 625-651 and 655 and 645. And these were all amended to remove NA 625-795 that was removed. We also repealed NAC 625-660. A licensed professional should not need to be reminded in regulation that being in responsible charge of work means adhering to the statutes and regulations relating to their profession and the work performed. 625-688 was repealed. The regulation essentially restated what was written in 666. 690 is not necessary for Section 1 to be stated in regulation, and Section 2 is already stated in NRS 625-380. And obviously NRS 625-795 was outdated and no longer necessary. If you want to find copies of these newly adopted regulations, and that would include the NAC 625-545 written contract, and then the NAC 625 regs that I read earlier. You can go to the Nevada Revised Statutes, click on that tab, and once you go down to NAC, you can see the updated regulations and when they were adopted. And that concludes my portion of this presentation. Derek?
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and keep this up for a second. I'm just going to touch on one thing, and then I'll have you poke ahead to the next slide.
Very good.
So Mark mentioned earlier that the Nevada Law Book, the printed version of that, the legislature is the one that that we order it from them. So the copies that we have tend to be in the rears a little bit. It's always a good idea. If you're looking for the most current statutes and regs, our website is going to always be the most current. And right there, you see the June 20th and September 16th amended regulations, amended and repealed regulations that were just done. So that's always your best source to find, what's current and what's not. So use our website. We try to make that a tool for everything. License renewals, firm registrations, all that stuff. So statutes and regs is always the best place to look there. Mark, if you would advance the slide, I'm going to encourage everybody to follow us on social media. We try to put information out in a variety of sources. One of the sources is social media. We do some posts. Hopefully they're educational. If, some folks maybe are not as engaged on social media, that's fine. We also do things on our website, blog posts, and emails that we send out. But yeah, the social media is also a good way we update you on things like the webinars that way. So do that. And then the next slide is going to have my contact information on it. If you have questions, I know there's a couple that have come through in the chat. we'll address those here in a minute. But my email is right there. Send me an email with questions. I will also get to the next slide, Mark. You'll see that certificate of completion. I'm going to leave that up for a minute as I talk through this. Once again, I mentioned earlier at the beginning, you are only required to report the 1 hour participation. You do not need to keep a certificate. However, if you want one, you can take a screen grab of this slide, or I can send you a PDF of this slide. It's literally the same thing. And I can email that to you. So you got my email. If you didn't get my email, it's on the website under the board contacts. And it's there. So just shoot me an email. I'll send you a certificate if you want it. The other thing that I would tell you is for those of you maybe on the little older engineers and land surveyors, you may not have an NCEES record. If not, then you document your PDH activity in whatever fashion works for you. Those of you who do have an NCEES record, I encourage you to use that. There is a document upload section in that system that allows you to upload certificates. If you create an Excel file, let's say, to document your PDH activity, you can upload, I'm not sure what file formats they allow, but you can upload documents that way. And that's always the best place to store it, because if your computer crashes or whatever, you've gotten a documentation of it. So use your NCS record. You paid for it, might as well use it. So the next slide, Mark, I think is the webinar recording on the website. So what I'm going to do, or what I've done for, this is, I don't know, we've done several of these over the years. Yeah. So anyway, what I do is these are being recorded, and sorry, I'm going to mute everybody here a second. These are being recorded, and I make the recordings available on our website, and this is where they live on the website. If you go to the first link, Engineers and Land Surveyors, and scroll down to Continuing Education, that page will have links to the most current webinars as well as the video recordings. So if for whatever reason, if somebody you talked to didn't watch this one or didn't get to it, I encourage them they get the same credit by watching the recorded video as if they attended live. So that's where it lives on our website. And that's where you get it. Let's see. We've got a couple minutes for questions. Mark, are you good? We've got about 15 minutes or so. Yep. Rachel, most recently, Rachel Cole had a question. Is there any movement to require signatures to be verifiable through a certificate authority? Currently, signatures are suggested to be self-signed certificates. What I would tell you is the digital signature process is twofold. In order to have a digital signature, a valid digital signature by any authority in Nevada, they're going to require that you use the Adobe or Bluebeam system. So that is the authority. That is you create a digital ID that then creates the metadata and all of the actual programming, underlying programming that makes that digital signature valid. So when you sign something with your digital signature, that's actually the verifiable authority that does that. There is no third-party authority that does it. It's built into the Bluebeam and Adobe systems. So when you create your digital ID, that's what makes it a digital signature. I know, and as Mark mentioned earlier, that we are going to do a webinar that addresses this. And he's got it up on the website right there where to find it. The digital signature guide is pretty good. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to go through there and read it, because it does, I think it gets down into the weeds. And for those of you who are not super technology savvy, it may be a little overwhelming. And I think that's why we're going to do the webinar, to maybe explain it in a little bit more detail. And we'll have a couple professionals that actually do it for their firms that are going to help walk us through it. So in the meantime, go to that guide and see what you can glean from it. And if you have questions, feel free to email me. I get involved in those questions quite a bit. So
Yes,
hopefully
yeah,
that
yes,
answers
please,
that.
yeah. Get a hold
Um,
of us and we will help you out.
Right. There was one more question earlier. Let's see if I can scroll up to it. Oh, I guess that was it. Kenneth asked if it was okay to have multiple people on the call, and that's totally fine. Again, we don't limit the videos to anybody. So if thousands of people watch the video and claim the PDH credit, more power to them. So
Absolutely. We want as many people watching this as possible.
yeah, and as Mark said, really the purpose of these webinars is we found that, and he addressed them, as he went through the NRS and the NAC codes and regs, that these are problem areas that we find that engineers and land surveyors cause them problems historically. And we figured, well, if we just made it mandatory that everybody attended this webinar, maybe we avoid some of the conflicts and problems that we have through complaints and help you as a result. So that's really the purpose of this. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of a courtesy to help you folks in your professions. So if there's any other questions, we can feel free to use the chat to ask them, and we've got a few minutes left that we can maybe answer a few. Mark, is there anything you want to emphasize?
Well, like Derek said, these are the kind of some of the common areas we see. And if you notice, they were most of our engineers and surveyors are very competent. We do a good job with licensing competent individuals. Most of the most of the complaints we see probably stem from a lack of communication. We talked about a written contract and the schedule. If you believe that you have a client that is not sophisticated, explain the process to them, walk them through walk them through that process, and explain to them the milestones and what's necessary to meet those milestones. But communication is the key. And if you're communicating and you're acting as a faithful agent, we probably won't see you.
Yep. Definitely a good point.
But we greatly appreciate everybody attending.
So yeah, just real quick, Rachel had a follow-up on her question. To be clear, I'm asking about a digital signature certificate that you would use within Adobe and Bluebeam. I'm not sure I understand your question, Rachel. There is no certificate. This digital signature, maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. When you sign something that you're submitting to an agency, the digital signature is all self-contained. It's going to have the authentication and all of that built into it. There is no certificate. Maybe I'm thinking of a different definition of the word certificate.
You know what? What we could do is we'll go in and take a look at this. Send us your email address, and we'll get back to you with an email response on that. So anybody that has that, send us your email, and we'll respond back to that question. We'll go back in and we'll research the certificate portion of a digital license signature.
And I will tell you, Rachel, you're not alone. There is still some confusion out there with folks on what this all means and how to do it. So I think that's why we're doing the webinar on this topic. So yeah, go ahead and shoot me an email. Mark, anything else?
I have nothing to add at this point.
If there's no,
I
Yeah.
just want to thank everybody for attending, and have a great holiday season coming up.
Absolutely. And just to be clear to anybody that's wondering that, no, we are not going to short you 10 minutes. You can claim the full hour for your PDH credit on this. If, you know, the meeting's going to end a little bit sooner than normal. So anyway, claim the full hour. If you have any questions, you've got my email, and
Please feel free to reach out.
yep, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks again. I'll have these videos posted here in the next day or so.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.